Rural Heritage on RFD TV is brought to you by Rural Heritage Magazine, a bi-monthly magazine featuring articles about farming and logging with draft animal power, small-scale diversified family farming and homesteading, and other aspects of our rich rural heritage. Rural Heritage Magazine, borrowing from yesterday to do the work of today. For subscription information, please call 319-362-3027 or order online at www.ruralheritage.com. Hi, welcome to another half hour of Rural Heritage on RFD TV. Last October, we visited the small diversified farm of Ralph and Connie Rice in Northeast Ohio. There's so much going on at this successful operation that we decided to break it into 3 parts. We've already shown you Ralph's water storage ponds, his raised vegetable beds, chicken house, and hog farrowing pens. Today we're going to look at how he feeds his hogs, cattle, and sheep, manages his composted manure, and rotates his pasture space. Ralph will also give us a brief tour of some of his mixed power field equipment. Next week, we'll conclude our visit at Riceland Meadows as Ralph takes us into the woods to fell a tree, bucket to length, and skid it out with his Percheron team. Don't go away, we've got a lot to show you today.
If we farrow in here, it's either early spring or late winter. Most of the time I farrow in pasture.
Okay.
I prefer that.
Okay.
It's better for the piglets. You know, they right away, I mean, these things are 2 days old. They're rooting around the ground. I have no idea what they're after, but I think they know because they are healthy piglets.
Do you farrow in cabins out there then? Or just
I farrow, sometimes I farrow, I usually put like a lean-to of some sort and let the sow pick her own. And 9 times out of 10, they'll either farrow in a kind of like a hay pile or a brush pile. And I always think, gee, oh man, it's going to rain, they're going to drown in there. They know what they're doing. I don't know how. Sometimes they'll go in the woods and a tree will have fallen over, they'll fix a spot. But I see them every day. I know what they're doing every day. I check on them. If she didn't come, she's got a baby. So I go check. And the first day, it's just that's all I do. I take her some water. I check on her. She's fine. I give her a drink of water. I walk away. By the next day, then we start doing stuff. And by the 3rd or 4th day, once the babies start coming out of the nest, she's all over with them.
So then how do you manage them out there?
I have a boar pen that I use.
Okay.
So I take it out there when the boar obviously is not in there. Open the gate and start feeding and to make it so the little pigs can get in but the moms can't. So then they get used to being special treats in there. I do the same thing. They go in one day for the special treat. I shut the door. I treat them as I need to and move on.
Okay.
So it's efficient. It works well. And with a little bit of help, there's no work to it.
Sure.
And here you'll see, and this is just a regular, you know, we have pigs in here that are growing pigs. And I usually don't put more than 2 pigs to a pen. That seems to be the right amount. And by cleaning every other day or so, it can go a week before the pens get bad. But I like to do it every day or every other day. It takes just a minute and it's done. Self-feeders. I have my own self-waters, which I'll show you out here. They're just 15-gallon drums with a nipple in the side. I did use 55 gallons, and I do sometimes when they're out back. But the trouble with 55 gallon, they get dirty faster. So the little ones, about once a week, we clean them out and put all fresh water back in. And again, these gates all head that way, so they get the idea of the coming and going.
You've got your fork and your broom handy, so it's pretty easy to keep things tidy.
Exactly. Fork, broom, shovel. I even have a hay fork in here because the straw in the wintertime, I don't want to drag it back and forth. And then this is what I was talking about, the Dutch doors. So it allows for sunlight, it allows for breeze, and this faces the east, so it works well with our weather. And when I open this up, then the pigs get to run out here. And this feedlot that I built was 50 by 50 when we first came here. And the biggest thing about it is nobody's slopping through the mud, even when I'm getting the horses in and out. I have a nice dry spot for everyone. It's easy to maintain with the skid loader. And again, that was by design for making life easy as I got older. And depending on the number of animals, manure management is a big deal. So this makes it nice. My compost pile, I'll get out of the road once. My compost pile is straight ahead. Joe, I do quite a bit of rotational grazing with one exception. The horse pasture pretty much stays horse pasture all year. That's mostly because of the sod base needed to support their weight. But even that, I try to be careful. So I keep a sacrificial lot, which for this coming winter will be out back here. That'll be where all the animals on nice days get to go back there and pug the ground a little bit and make a mess for me. And I'm not sure yet what that's going to be. It's possible that that'll be a sorghum Sudan field in June. I'll get a cutting off, I'll get some grazing off, and then I'll plow it back down and put my spelt there next year. The other thing I was going to say was, as far as rotational grazing, we rotational graze all around these paddocks, which we'll see and talk about. Right now, I have my sheep in the ram right here. But anyways, I try not to overgraze unless I'm doing it by design. Like when I'm cleaning up a crop of oats, for example, we talked about earlier, or if I'm going to frost seed the following spring. I like the animals to graze it pretty short, so I think I get more seed to soil contact when I'm frost seeding. I like to do that because I frost seed 2 years prior to corn. That allows me about 150 pounds to the acre of nitrogen available to the coming plant. So in 2 years, that's 300 pounds of nitrogen waiting for the corn. Corn being the heaviest feeder that I plant. And it's a lot nicer to pick 8 or 9 inch ears by hand if you have to, or bigger if you're planting open pollinated. So the free nitrogen is a good thing. And if you buy fertilizer, nitrogen is what costs the most, and probably is the most petrochem fertilizer that we use. So I think being cognizant is a good thing. So this feedlot was originally put in here to keep the mud out of the barn and have a place for the pigs to get out in winter especially. And it makes everything accessible. It keeps it clean, makes it easy. You'll see my pig over there drinking. Cinchi, what are you doing? So you can see this makes for a pretty nice space. So on really bad days, it still allows me, the animals, a chance to get out in the summertime or in the wintertime, a few hours, and I don't have any trouble with them slipping on the ice because I usually do one of two things. If it's warm enough, I scrape it so it's dry, and if it's cold, then I let them build a little bit of a snowpack, so that gives them grip. The pigs seem to enjoy just running and sliding. They have a big playtime that way. My plan now for this coming winter, I added this section of feedlot. What that's going to allow me to do, the cows will spend their winter, the cold nights underneath the overhang in the protection of the barn, but they'll feed in this. I can fill that hay feeder with the skid steer in 4 or 5 bales, round bales of hay, and when I want to use the horses, I can close the cows on that section. All these gates can be open, so that allows me access any time of year, in and out. Don't have to mess with the gates, because in prior years, that's a really tough deal. You have the cows on here, so I got to shut them under there, and they're in there all day while I'm working the horses, if say I'm cleaning manure or whatever. Or they're out here, and then I got to stop the horses, get off, open the gate, shut the gate, move the cows. It's just much more efficient, and I think it's going to be a lot more comfortable because now I just doubled the size of the feedlot almost. And where before I had to have a hay feeder and everything here, now I've cut this down, and still I have, by swinging one gate, I can clean that with the manure, clean the manure with the skid steer, and the whole time the cows are eating, they're protected, and the hay obviously protected some too.
Right. You did all this in the past year or so?
I did all this in the last couple of months.
Okay.
So my hope is that they'll eat whatever they want of the hay. Obviously, I keep a lot of it outside, what the cows eat. So they always leave some. So I can still go in there with the skid steer, push it out, put all new bales in. I get a couple days of bedding from the dry. I just push it in here, and the manure gets scraped out. So I'm thinking, obviously I haven't used it yet, but I'm thinking it's going to be a good thing.
Yeah. Did you build this yourself?
I did. I had a young man who worked for me as a kid in school has since become a carpenter. And so the deal was we're going to build it together. And then I got my knee replaced, so he had a friend come. But again, it's my design, and it worked out pretty well.
Those are highway guardrails?
Those are highway guardrails. Left over, you'll see them around here, different places.
Is this oak? The wood?
The wood is hemlock.
Oh, okay.
Strictly because I was laid up and couldn't get my own pine.
Okay.
And I didn't want to hold the project up, so we went ahead with there's a local mill that saws hemlock.
Okay.
So that worked out well.
And if you could have used pine, you would have, because it's lighter, because it's local, because it's your own?
Because it's my own.
Okay.
Just
Gotcha.
strictly cost effective.
Gotcha.
And if they break it, I just get more.
Right,
It's not,
right,
not a big
right.
deal. But that's going to hold up really good. It's sturdy, and cattle are not hard on stuff like that. If they're going to do anything, they're going to rub on it, which just smooths it down.
So you've got access all the way around and through it with your skid steer?
Correct.
Wow.
Yes. When I get ready to fill this, I'm going to have livestock in here. So the way these gates are all set, I open that one, and I open this main gate to be able to fill the hay feeder, or even if it's just to get the manure out. The doorway to this feedlot was made so that when I open this gate, it closes the space. So the cattle can't come in when I'm trying to work. So the cattle are still confined, I guess, but I have full access to this. I put a ramp on that end. It gives me full access to this, full access to the manure, and the animals are still confined.
All right, so in 50 years ago, or whenever you were doing this on graph paper, you didn't have this on the paper, I bet.
I did actually have this area.
Did you
But
really?
I thought it would be, the garden was in and everything. I actually had this as what I thought would be like a place for mare and colt.
Okay.
Because back in the day, I thought I'd raise my own colts, and this would be, and then I soon realized that, man, that just makes a muddy mess. And so it was much better for hay storage. Well, then, when I realized with the southeast exposure, it's a lot better for the animals in winter. It's been really good. And talk about convenience. I mean, I'm right here with a little bit of stone. It won't need to be cemented. And, I fill my barn. This barn has a hay loft. So the horse hay is in square bales. Because again, when in the wintertime, when things are worst, it's very easy to climb a ladder, throw down hay, and feed the draft horses. So the cow hay and a little bit of hay that the horses eat early on when the pastures are fading, they eat out of a round bale. The rest of the time, the squares are upstairs. So it's just cow hay that's stored out here. And these are large bales of straw. And I try to keep...
Spelt straw?
Spelt straw, yes. It's got a little bit of grass in it.
Sure.
But, it just worked out that way. But there's, I don't even know, I think there's 9 of them. And that'll be enough straw with what we use for winter, because with the leftover hay that I peel off, that becomes also bedding. And I can take one, put it in here, and the cows roll it around like a big plaything. I don't hardly have to spread it. They do most of it themselves. Some of them were made with a friend's baler, so they're bigger. So I may actually set them up in the barn where the horses are and peel it off. Use some for the cows and some for the horses. So we'll see how that goes as time permits. These are the 2 pigs that we're going to be sending to freezer camp for ourselves. And you see they get pumpkins, leftover pumpkins. They get corn, and you see how well they're not really interested in it. And they still get ground hog feeds over in that plastic dish. They're on a water, and this pen they're in is 32 by 16. So I don't have them out on pasture because we're getting right down to the wire on how soon they're going to be ready to go.
You're finishing them right now?
I'm finishing them right now, yes.
What's in the ground corn meal?
Pretty much that's it. Ground corn meal, a little bit of soybean. And they put some kind of vitamin pack.
Okay.
Which it comes in the feed. I don't really care one way or the other because my pigs have access to my pastures, and I think they get most of the vitamins they need from the soil, but that's part of what they do. What the heck? I don't know how pigs, they can find anything. That's probably been on there for God knows how long. They are something.
Yes, they are.
I guess that's the cool part about them, though. If you want to take a stone or a stump out, they'll do all that work for you, too.
Yep. Yep.
A lot of people don't realize that, but they're actually really workhorses. This is something I'm going to be a minute on.
It's really braided.
I think I'd be farther ahead to go find the
Wire cutter.
pliers and cut them. I see what I did, but look at there, I got it, Joe. Okay, one less toy to play with.
What breed of hog is this?
They're kind of a mixed landrace, but I like to use landrace moms, you know, and then I cross them with a little bit of everything. These guys, their daddy was a ham. As our farm becomes more and more productive, we have more and more forage. And so these round bales are second cutting, and I said before, I paid to have them mowed and wrapped. Mostly this year because of my knee, but there's enough here that I'll feed my cattle all winter, and they'll have access to all the dry hay they want too, but it meets the protein requirements and keeps me from having to have more storage for second cutting hay. And really the horses don't need that high of protein, so I just as soon not feed it to them. You know, they're very content with long stem timothy and trefoil. That seems to be a perfect mix for them.
So is it dry in here? Inside this?
It's baled wet.
Okay.
We mow it one day and bale it the next, generally. Sometimes, depending on the conditions, you can mow it and bale it in the same day.
So does it ferment in here? Does
it acts just like a silo. They call it haylage.
Okay.
So it's a real sweet smelling.
Okay.
And it is. They must be sweet because the cows almost knock you down to try to get to it. They love it.
Will horses eat it?
Horses will eat it, and I think, you know, in my mind, you never let horses eat silage because it would make them sick.
Right.
I almost think they could probably eat some of this, other than it being too rich for them. But there's less spoilage, so it's like in a complete vacuum inside that.
Sure.
The absence of oxygen, that's the idea.
Right. It's more efficient than the tubes that I see, right?
Much more efficient. Well, the nice thing about it, especially for me, like last year I had 61 of them put in a long row.
Okay.
And that works great, except for once you open it, you got to keep feeding it.
Right.
Well, for me, I can feed these in July, and I only got to use one at a time. The rest of them are still good. Coyotes are becoming a problem for us. I shouldn't say they're a problem. The population is increasing. I hear them, I see them. So we've real recently added a donkey to the mix in the hopes that he'll run them off. Now, we don't see them in our pastures. Everything is fenced here, so I think it's going to be a minimal problem. I don't have to maintain it, and it's kind of looking out for the sheep and hogs and cattle, whatever. They got the protection of this overhang, even in the winter. It's pretty nice and makes a great place for the lamb. These are male lambs that'll be soon headed out for customers, and my ewe lambs that'll join the flock here shortly. I had one mother this year, had 5 babies and raised 4, which is an incredible feat to me on 2 teats. And there was maybe a pound difference in the lambs at weaning. So I don't know how they sorted it out, but she's done that before. She raised 3 last year with no problem, and she raised 4, I think, the year before that. And I'm kind of, as long as the ewes are productive and no problems worm-wise or anything like that, they get to stay here. I can't say I'm a huge commercial breeder where I got to have new lambs every time. So I expect she'll probably be productive till she's 10 anyways. As long as she doesn't develop problems with her bag or anything, they stay here. I like the carcass. I mean, that's what everything on this farm I look at from a butcher's eye, as morbid as that sounds. That's what we're doing here, is raising meat. And I like the genetics that we've managed to acquire, and the progeny is perfect and no complaints. This is exactly what I'm talking about as far as having the luxury, I guess, of having machinery storage. I have things in here pretty well wedged in, but that being said, there's a method to it. So the hay tools kind of come out at the same time. My drag and lump smashers in the back because they're easy to move with a couple guys. Grain drill, it's all greased up after planting the spelts, ready to go. I have a little 268 New Holland baler. It's probably not quite as old as I am, but it's got some age on it, but it works well. And same deal, we wash it, oil it, and put it inside for the winter. I think that's a pretty good idea. This baler I bought brand new 15 years ago, and again, I'm not the greatest mechanic, so maintaining the lubrication and keeping it clean and inside makes a big difference.
Do you run this off of your power cart?
I can run everything in this barn off the power cart. Yeah, this requires the hydraulics to open the back door. So this year we didn't do it because I was laid up, but we have done it, and we will do it a lot more next year. I have a Gleaner E combine. It's an old-fashioned from the 1960s with a 10-foot grain head on it, and I have it set up we only use it for the spelt. Before that, I had a little Alice Chalmers 60 that we pulled behind the tractor or the power cart. Well, I sold that for $500 and bought that for $1,100 3 years ago. So I was just at the right place at the right time, and it's in really good condition. This is a classic example of what I'm talking about as far as building on and using the farm's resources. This is a 16 by 48 edition, and it'll house the last few pieces of equipment of mine that have to sit outside for winter. Mostly the hay wagon, the gravity wagon, and my big disc. They'll go in here, even though it's not inside a building, the protection that's going to offer it's a big deal. And I'll have less than $2,000 in that addition for that much space. I think over time I'll probably put a little gravel in there so we're not sitting on the dirt. For this year I'll park everything on boards, and that's better than nothing. But I chose to do this a little bit different because the span is 16 foot and I didn't want to be all the way out on the end. So I stopped at 14 feet and then left the 2-foot overhang. So it's not that long of a span, even though it's fairly flat. The metal will actually shed the water and the snow pretty good, even on the north side. Some of this lumber come from your farm? Some of it came from the farm, yes. Some of it was hemlock to complete the project. Later today, we're going to skid out some pine logs I'm going to close in the north end. Okay. So that's the beautiful part about siding. That's the one time when board footage and square footage are the same. So even guys don't understand that whole board footage thing, that's the easy one. We need, and we'll figure it out. I'll get a tape measure and kind of show how we do it, but it's not going to take a lot. I think somewhere around 120, 150 board feet will do it. I try to make use of everything we have, and I think it's sort of like the farm. If you're going to butcher a beef, you should eat the undesirable cuts too. If you're going to kill an animal, you ought to make use of all of it. Well, it's kind of the same thing for me when it comes to trees. If you're going to kill the tree for a building project, then don't you owe it to the tree and to make use of all the rest of it? So I try to work all the tops up, and it's not the greatest firewood, but in the case of pine, but it still works out well. Right now I'm struggling with the emerald ash borer is decimating the forests around here, and ours is included, and they're killing all the ash trees. So I'm afraid in the way of the American chestnut and the elm, we're going to see that next in the ash trees. There's no stopping it, so I'm sure it's going to happen. Well, I had hoped to cut my ash off this year and get as much of it sold as I could, because I won't be able to use it all for obviously building or furniture. It's just not going to happen. So I'm going to take as much of it as I can. I'm going to use the rest in the sugar house, and I'm probably going to have some sod and sticker it and set it up in big slabs, because maybe 15 years from now people are going to realize what a great furniture lumber that was, and it could be resawn and sold at that point. So
be sure to come back next week for the third part of this series at Riceland Meadows. This program is available for purchase. To order your copy, please call 319-362-3027 or visit www.ruralheritage.com. Rural Heritage is a bi-monthly magazine dedicated to draft animal farming and logging, as well as other aspects of our rich rural heritage. It is published by Mishka Press, which also offers a complete line of back-to-the-land books, DVDs, and calendars. Call or write for a catalog or subscription information, or visit our website at www.ruralheritage.com.